Okay, so we had a good question last day, and it was well, blunt, very blunt. It was, well, what is the point of this Ruby, right? And I hope I kind of stressed that a little bit. I hope I cleared that up. Um, Up until this point, we introduced you to web development through the front end. We've only been doing style sheets. We've only been doing HTML. Um, Last day, we started learning how to set the stage on the back end. The back end or the server side, and this is what the client is talking to, what your web browser is talking to. There's many different facets to the back end, and you're going to be seeing two of them. So you're going to see your web application, and you're going to written in Sinatra, and you're going to see the database, which is even apart from that. So the application talks to the database, but you can have an application without a database. But we're slowly building you up to the point where now, yes, we can bring a database on board, and we can start making our application truly dynamic so that it is data driven. Okay, so today, I think you guys are probably already on this in the coursework in Compass, but we will take the arrays that we defined last day as part of the demo. If you remember, we did like a rusted out old water heater and a pile of sidewalk bricks, and we bundled that all up in a hash. This is kind of like that introductory step to learn how to deal with data coming back from the database. We're not at the database yet. We're just showing you what it kind of looks like. And for all intents and purposes, it behaves pretty much the same. So we're going to take that, and we're going to take that data, and we're going to put it into our HTML documents. So these are dynamic, right? It's not going to be static anymore. You're not going to be hard coding. You're going to take data from ultimately the database and merge it with the HTML that you've created. We'll talk about instance variables, which really allow us to do this. Now, this is part of a wider object-oriented concept, but we're going to see them firsthand in practical terms today. We'll talk about staying dry. Don't repeat yourself. Very important. And looping, which also kind of lends itself to that. And it's just practical when working with large data sets or whatever constructs. So I always kind of wince at this slide because I think HTML is pretty interesting. I don't think it's boring, but it definitely does get a little bit more interesting with what we call embedded Ruby. So ERB. Everything in Ruby has that RB suffix. This allows us to dynamically generate HTML. Now, we basically use just ordinary HTML with a couple of exceptions, different alligator tags. And these alligator tags let us either execute code or output something to the screen. So this is hopefully where you kind of see where string interpolation becomes important. Can you guys see there's two different types of alligator tags? See if you have sharp eyes. We got the kind that you just want to do like if else's, or maybe you want to execute some sort of function for whatever purpose. And then we've got another kind of alligator tags that spits out values to the screen. It's kind of like calling puts, except inside of your HTML document. Can you guys see the difference between these two? So here's some alligator tags up here. Kind of looks like an alligator tag, or kind of looks like an alligator, I guess, right? Although I think if it was an alligator, this would be pointing the other direction because, he's got a big mouth or whatever. I guess this is him underneath the water. We got this one down here for the embedded values. Opening tag, closing tag, Ruby code on the inside. Ordinary HTML. And just like in Ruby, if you have an if, you also have to have an end to wrap it all up, to close it off. Open tag, closing tag. Embedded values, open tag, closing tag. See the difference? What is it? What's the difference between this one? Is it too obvious? Is this like a rhetorical question? There's an equal sign. Look at that one right there. I'm not really sure. You guys looking at me. It's like, What is he like? This is a trick question? No, there's an equal sign. So if you want to actually display something to the screen, you have something stored in a variable, whatever it might be, or you might have some sort of method, a helper method that humanizes your time. I think that's one of the examples you've probably been working on. If that returns some sort of string value, whatever that is, you need that equal sign to get it out onto your HTML page. So, all part of this, and this is one of those things you just kind of got to see in action, but we're sort of going to abandon, not entirely, but we're going to abandon HTML. Everything now, from this point on, is going to be ERB, or embedded Ruby. Embedded Ruby becomes HTML. We render an ERB file, and that rendering process changes it into valid HTML that your browser is going to understand. Your browser doesn't understand embedded Ruby. It only understands HTML. To do that, we use this ERB method. There's all sorts of different templating languages. ERB is just one of them. I've been using Java or Node and JavaScript a lot lately. There's like Jade and EGS or EJS. Hamel's another one. All sorts of different ones. ERB is just kind of like the one that's always been there and sort of everybody uses, unless you got some compelling reason not to. This is just a method. It's saying, okay, take this parameter. This is my home.erb page. Made a little bit nicer by converting it into a symbol, and change this into HTML with whatever data I've already given you. Oh, and it's worth mentioning here that all of these, by default, all of these views, we call them, or ERB files, are stored in app/views. And I think you're probably familiar with this from your Finstagram application. So, and here's the problem. Now we're going to bridge a gap. We're getting data in our actions.rb file. Somehow we got to get that data, be it from the database or maybe it's data we're hard coding today, and we got to provide it to our views. To do this, we use what's called an instance variable. And an instance variable is accessible to all members of a class. This is object-oriented stuff, getting a little bit ahead of us, but know that if you put this ampersand in front of a variable name, not only can you access it within your actions controller, or assign it in your actions controller typically, you can also access the data stored inside of it, inside of your ERB file. And again, this is something that probably is best just demonstrated. But you see that here. So if we were looking at, if we assigned user in our controller action, we can use that special text embedding alligator tag to output it to screen. It's accessible in our ERB file. Yes, if you start repeating yourself, then you're probably doing something wrong. Just take that as a rule of thumb. You're probably also making way more work for yourself. One way that we do this is by defining methods. You've already seen it. We don't want to copy and paste all these if-else constructs everywhere. We just want to wrap them up, define them, and use them one time. The benefit of this is that if you need to change something, you only need to change it in one place. You don't have to search through your entire code base trying to find out or trying to update some minor change, and maybe it's just a variable name or whatever, some sort of logic. Define it in a method, change the method. Okay, so we did looping. In terms of the loop themselves, there's nothing new here. So in your Finstagram application, you got all these posts, and people can come along and post as many as they want. So there could be potentially thousands or tens of thousands. We find these things, and we use this each method. Nothing different than what we did in FizzBuzz. In the ERB context, though, we still need to provide it these alligator tags. Without the alligator tags, it's just going to print what it sees to screen, right? It's not going to execute. It's not going to recognize that as Ruby code. It's going to think that that's part of the content of your web page and print out posts.each do whatever. And your user is going to be a little bit confused. Okay. Yeah, layouts again. let's get to this as part of the demonstration. Layouts also allow us to dry stuff out, and I'll revisit this when we get to that point. Okay, so let's take a look at where we are from not last class, but the class before, just to refresh our memory. I think I already got Apache running, so I just need to open it up. Nope. Yep. There we go. Uh-oh. That's not what I wanted. There we go. Okay, so there's my raccoon. Here's all that press board, all that kind of stuff. These are huge images, right? They're taken with my cell phone, so they're about 5 megabytes a piece. So that's why they take so long. That's something we have to contend with maybe in another class. But what we want to do now is, get to where your Finstagram application should be. We want to take this and model it and pretend like it's coming from the database. That's really what we're doing today. So this is just ordinary HTML. There's no executable code in here anywhere, or at least not executable on the server side. Here's my new setup. Now, just so you know, I'm not digging this up out of nowhere. I've stripped down the Finstagram application and put it up on GitHub. So I use this mostly for demo purposes. If you are interested in Sinatra, you just want to get started quickly, I invite you to go to my GitHub account and clone it. All it does is just make sure that it sets up a very simple application, a hello world application, and then you can come along and just start filling up in the blanks because the skeletal structure has already been provided for you. So I'm going to open this up just to show you what it looks like. Hello world. Okay. So today's demo is going to focus entirely on getting this stuff from my ordinary, basic bare bones web page to here, to this Hello World program. So it's going to involve a lot of copying and pasting, and hopefully by looking, you're going to have a deeper understanding of Sinatra. First thing actually I want to show you, though, is really just what's happening here. And this is going to get back to those layouts and all that kind of stuff. If we're looking at our slides, well, I went too far. Looking at this is what we call in Sinatra typically an action, right? So when the client makes a request, types in your url.com, this is what receives that request after it's been processed by the server. That is found in app actions.rb. And so here you see the exact same thing. It's just, receiving that request at the root directory, at the / directory, and it's rendering the index view. You find these index views, all your views in this directory here. This is by default. You can expect this of, I guess you can't expect it every time, but this is the default setting. You want to define a view to structure the content of your page. You create an ERB file in this views directory. So here's index, and we've got some very simple, very easy HTML. It's missing a few things though, right? If we look at this one, we open up our inspector. Here's my elements. I still got all like the trappings of a web page, right? We see the skeletal framework. We see the big HTML box. We see the head, where I set the title with the C9 Sinatra setup. And then I see the body. So all of this stuff, this is the only thing that's contained inside the index.erb. The rest of it is contained inside the layout. So this is the last slide. This is the one I kind of just skipped over right at the very end. The layout is what wraps every single page in your application. So if I change something here, and maybe you've got 4 or 5 pages that your user likes to visit, whatever I change in here is going to be the same across all of those 4 or 5 pages. So I'll change this up just to demonstrate. Okay, refresh. It's going to make a very small change. And it just changed the title of my page. If I actually want to change anything over here, whoops. Hello, Dan. Oh, hey. All right. Okay. That's all going to get rendered in this index.erb. There we are. You see how the layout encompasses your page. I think that's pretty, I think that's well, we're going to see. We're going to see where you guys take that. But you can have as many of these as you want. So you might want to just view one post or one cache of salvage that I found or whatever. Every time I call this ERB method and I provide it that template, that index template in this case, it takes all of this content and puts it where it's called yield. And you'll see that special alligator tag that has that equal sign, right? So it's just taking one string and interpolating it into another. So it's not quite the same thing as just ordinary Ruby, but it's that's what it does. Okay, so let's, with this in mind, there's a few things we have to do. So we want to get this static web page and set it up so that we can use this kind of framework. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy and paste all the good content. I'll get my header. I think that's a good idea. All the way up to here, I'll copy it and paste it here. Not in layout, but in index. So we don't have any styles yet. We don't even actually have any images. But we're on our way. Tidy it up. Press refresh. So it's pretty unimpressive at this point. You can see that we've got some missing images. Let's solve that problem. I've actually got them stored here because downloading them would be take too long. Actually, before I do that, let's get the, oh, maybe that's not a good idea. Okay, let's just upload that stuff. Yes, question.
I'm just curious. So right now, because originally when we designed the website, it was working fine. But now what we're doing is we're bringing it into Ruby sort of index or something. Like I just don't understand what you're doing now, like because it was working before, and like pull up the.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Now, this is kind of what we're leading into. So this is what it looks like. It looks pretty good, pretty reasonable. Now, how do I add another find on my page? No, I mean if I find another pile of junk, maybe I find some cabinets with some nice handles on them. I want to go back and get them later. How do I get that picture onto this page? You could do that, right? So every single time I take a picture, I could go home, write some new HTML code, and you do all that stuff. So, but we want to make a web application, and hopefully, if I do this successfully, I'll be able to take a picture, and it'll do all this stuff automatically, and the most recent picture will appear at the top of the feed. So that's the same idea as Instagram. We're not deviating too much from that idea.
So you can actually use it and lock it like an app.
Yeah, that's exactly it. This is a static web page. It doesn't change until I change it. Well, I mean, that's the funny thing. We start talking in these terms, and it's true the other way around too, right? But this is the difference between me being able to or having to go write new code versus just collecting the data and letting the application render the appropriate view, right? So that's where we're leading to. So all I've done here is I've taken some of that static content, and this, I copied all of that static content, right? And this is going to get whittled down, and it's going to become, we're going to dry it out. We don't want to repeat ourselves anymore. Okay, so back to where I was. One one thing I should mention, there's no real nice way to segue into this, but if you're working with JavaScript, you're working with CSS, which we are working with CSS. In Sinatra, by default, we always keep these static files in a folder called public. And then I like to organize it like this. I like to, inside my public directory, I like to create a styles directory where I keep my CSS. And I like to create an images directory where naturally I keep my images. So I've got my images here. I'm going to copy them. Hopefully I can just hit Control V here. Can I? Maybe not. Let's see if I can drag them. Here we go. There we are. So I got some cabinets and some scraps, some metal shelving, and some press board. I don't think it's going to work yet, but let's try it. So at least I have these images. This would be kind of a mean question to ask you because it's really going to be hard to see. Any guesses, though? I'll give you just a couple of seconds to think about it. It's looking for the press board image here. Oh, am I in the wrong spot? Oh, no. Well, I did in the wrong one. Oh, come on. All right. Jeez. All right, let's try that again. New folder, public. We'll start with images. That's one reason it didn't work. Shoot. All right, grab that, upload. There we are. Still not going to work, but at least now this time we've set the stage for success here. Refresh. Oh, it did work. Oh, wonderful. Actually, that's kind of bad because I wanted to show you something. What I was going to show you is that this is kind of murky. It doesn't know like this images / pressboard. Now, this is just kind of Sinatra stuff. This is, you got to go read the manual to find out why. But anything you put in public should probably be prefixed with that slash. In this case, we kind of got lucky. It didn't matter. But that just says, okay, this is a static file. We know just by default, because that's the way Sinatra is, go look in here. This is your root directory. That's all that means. Okay, so we've got our pictures. We still don't have any style though. That's no good. So let's fix that. Let's create another like I did before. So I'm repeating myself. Don't repeat yourself. Make sure you do it right the first time. Styles. And then here, all the stuff I have in this folder. So this is my app.css. I want to put this in here. Exact same structure. We're not even really doing anything groundbreaking at all. We're just sort of transferring everything over. So I called that app.css. I open it up and I'm going to copy and paste everything I find in here. There we go. Okay, so this is this. We should still have that problem I was hoping to unearth just a couple of seconds ago. Let's see if it works though. Maybe we get lucky again. And if we don't get lucky, we can see some errors here as they get spit out. Okay, so nothing there. What do you think the problem is? Where do I load my styles? How do I link styles to my document? In the head. And where is the head in my case? Not here. It's in layout, right? So this is the wrapper for your entire site. And if you want these styles consistently, you can just do that here. So I want to minimize any problems. So I'm going to do a little bit of copying and pasting again. So we've got all of this good stuff. We've got everything between the body tags, but we don't actually have any of this good stuff. We need the link and we need this this scaling so that it's properly responsive on a mobile phone. Go back to here. There we are. So I kind of blew the surprise here, so you know what? I'm just going to save you the pain. I'll put a slash in front of that. Let's see what kind of styles we get. Hopefully this works. So if we do see anything missing, we're going to see it reported here in the console. Okay, so that's starting to look pretty good. You know, when I was preparing for this, but we're still missing something, right? This is where it gets really weird. And I'm not entirely sure why it worked this way, because you can see the N in recycle freedom, and it's everything is kind of all mucked up, right? This actually took me a little bit of debugging today, so I'll show you what I did. Or do I have it up? That's the question. Oh, do I dare just go off script here? Ooh, what should I do? Okay, let's see if I can figure this out without looking at my notes. Risky business, I know. All right, so what I discovered, though, is that this position, for whatever reason, because this is the way that Sinatra renders, this isn't just straight up HTML. Some of this stuff is going to get processed, and sometimes styles might not be applied in time. And I suspect that's what's happening here. So the first step I took to fix that, here's my splash. If you remember, that's where that raccoon was standing. Or this is the splash. I'm going to make its container absolute. I'm already losing confidence in my ability to debug this without my notes, but let's try it. Okay, not bad. I see my raccoon. That's looking a little bit better, but we still, you know, this thing's all up on the left-hand side, and my raccoon got smushed down. I think this is the width of it's probably pretty easy. Let's fix that. I never actually set the width, so if I set it to 100%, it should stretch across the screen. So this is just plain old CSS at this point. Okay, looking pretty good. What I discovered, and I suspect, again, just kind of guessing here, just because of the way that these things are glued together and rendered and merged, the way I fixed the problem that I see is I wrapped the entire body in another tag, and I set some styles on it. So this is in the layout, right? And whatever I put in here is going to be applied to every single page. And while I'm doing that, you know, maybe it's a good idea, because I just sort of thinking of this now. What if I want this like raccoon on every page that you deliver, or every page that you visit? So why not just take this out and put it in my layout like this? We'll put it right up at the top. So no matter what pages I decide I want on my site, first thing you're going to see is my mascot there. All right, let's just see what this looks like. I don't think it's going to change anything, but I certainly want to make sure that nothing got broken. Okay, yeah, that looks pretty good. Still got that major overlap. So, problem. Let's style that main. And let's say its position is also absolute. And let's give it a wide top margin, because really all I'm taking is just, you know, there's the top, there's my raccoon, and I just want to push everything down so it doesn't get covered. I'll say margin top. So I gave it 30% in this case. I'll give it 70%. No, I'll give myself a 30% margin, so just so that it matches. Let's see if this makes the correct change. Okay, kind of. Not quite what I'm looking for. And I am totally going to cheat, because I know I'm going to go down a path to nowhere here. So just let me get my fix in order. This actually took a lot. I usually allocate myself 1 hour of prep time. This took me well over 2.5, just trying to figure this stuff out, right? Welcome to life as a web developer. Sorry, it's coming up on my other screen. So you're going to see it's not going to be too much different, but there's going to be like one of those things that you just can't find in time. You'll see pretty much the same thing right up at the top. It's just I accounted for some of the different media orientations, so that if it's a wide screen versus a small screen, so you see where I did that. I got that margin. I gave it like a very high margin. If it's it's a narrow width. And here's what I was trying to do before. So I used 30% instead of VH, which means vertical height. Effectively, it's the same thing. Whatever the vertical height is, give me 30 units of that, 30%. Okay, let's see if this actually fixed anything. Oh, what on earth? And what did I do for the layout? Huh. Well, it looks okay. This is kind of what I ran into this morning. Oh, I didn't save. Maybe that has something to do with it. Oh, that's why. Oh, geez. I was probably on the right way, on the right track. But since I didn't save that last one, you see what I did there? Really silly. Let me show you. I took out this, if you recall, that splash page, and I put it into the layout, and then I left it here. Whoops. See, I left it here, and I left it unsaved, and then it had two splash screens. That was the problem. Okay, so let's move forward, make sure that this is okay. Let's make sure that our mobile looks good. It is mobile. Landscape looks good. Portrait looks good. Different widths look good. Okay, so I think we're getting there. So it's still pretty responsive. You'll never get this perfect, so don't, just get it as best you can. That's kind of, you're just going to have to call it a day at some point. That looks pretty good. I'm satisfied with this. Okay, so from here, I'm going to do a little bit more copying and pasting. Every time I hit enter up here, or I press refresh, it's always going to this view here. So watch what happens if I take out this rendering, right? So there's no more web page. I just want to hammer that point home. This is what's generating it. And I think you got up to this point in your project, so it's a blank page, of course, and you can actually just type in whatever you want here. Hi again, Dan. It's just ordinary text. It's going to be very small. Yep, there it is. Okay, so that's where it's coming from. And really, when you get down to it, right, HTML is just ordinary text. It's just got the markup, which is what the browser uses to determine the structure. So I think, judging from what I've seen you guys doing, you're kind of at this point. So I'm going to replicate what you've done in class so far. I'm going to take all that data associated with my various salvaging finds here. I've got my press board. So these are, it provides the coordinates on the Google map, provides a path to the image. These ones also may need a preceding slash, maybe. And it got that thing that we introduced that last day, that idea of freshness. I just found it, go get it. It's 3 days later, someone probably picked it over already. So that's what I've got so far. And I think from what you guys have been doing, you took this, and I'll replicate that, and you put it all into an array. Your press board, your metal shelving, and cabinets and scrap wood. So now this is what, again, I'm trying to, we're preparing you for something here. We're preparing you to interface with the database. Uh-oh. I guess, maybe. All right, there we go. And I think you guys got to this point where you called that toString, right? Did you guys see this? Yeah, so let's just take a look. And there it is. That's my construct. It's pretty ugly to look at, but we can use this data to make our website look good. All of this data mirrors all the data we put here manually. And in the coming days, all of this data is going to be stored inside of a database. We're just bridging these gaps, one small baby step at a time. So we still got that problem because we don't want to look at, all this junk on the screen, just like these stringified hashes. We want to do something in our index.erb file that's going to allow us to display the interface that we've become accustomed to. So let's just comment some of this stuff out because this is going to change drastically. So if you want to comment something in HTML, use that open bracket, exclamation, dash, dash, and you close it all off like that. Here I introduce the instance variable. I've called these caches. I'm not entirely sure what a good name for it is. Get rid of that 2s. I've assigned the value that I just stringified and displayed to screen to an instance variable. This instance variable is now accessible inside of index.erb. Let's display it. Let's see what it looks like. Using that special alligator tag with the equal sign, let's see what this gives us. It might not give us anything really that good, but we'll see. So we define a variable in one file, and we have access to it in a completely separate file. It might just give us like a little object in brackets kind of thing. Oh, no, there it is. It's not too bad, right? And since when I did that, and since I'm rendering that layout, everything's been copied and pasted from index.erb into layout.erb. Now I can see my raccoon. Before I couldn't. So let's take this a little bit further. Instead of just dumping this all out to file, let's loop over top of it. We'll say each do cache like that. And hopefully you'll see where I'm going as I go very slowly here. And inside, I'm going to, we'll just output the description. Just like that. So this is like the first step, just, build this up very slowly so you can see what's happening. Because really what we want to do is generate all this stuff I've had commented here. We want to do this dynamically. We want to do this automatically with whatever data is returned from the database. We're not there yet, but that's the next step. Refresh. Uh-oh. What happened? Let's see if we can solve this. So index ERB2, there's a problem here. I was trying to concat a buffer. Uh-oh, what is going on? Index.erb37. Oh, I know what it is. Oh, I make this mistake every single time. This is a hash, it's not an object. So if I want to index a hash, I pass it the symbol or the key of the symbol. All right, let's try that again. I make that mistake every single time. Same error. That's very disheartening. What is going on? What is going on? Did I make a mistake here somewhere? Let's just take this out. What am I doing here? Index 35. Where are my mentors? What are you seeing there? Can't see it? It's going to be something really dumb, I know. I wonder if it needs... This is kind of a long shot. I'm just trying stuff while Kevin sees if he can figure this out. And Scott sees if he can... Oh, is that what did I do? Oh, this thing. Yeah. See, we got two types of alligator tags. We got the logical ones. We got the ones that put out to screen. Okay, that's a little bit better. So now I've done this. It's looking a little bit neater too, right? So it's one at a time. It's spit out these things to the bottom, the stringified representation of that hash. What I was trying to do here, this is where I got tripped up. Probably don't need this. I just wanted to output the description. Okay. So I shouldn't see all those weird coordinates anymore. Just description. Abandoned press board, metal shelving. Hopefully you can all see that. Cabinets and scrap wood. Those are just the ones I applied. So hopefully now you're kind of seeing, okay, well, I've got the data. How can I structure it using ERB to make some, really good HTML? It all ultimately gets changed into HTML. Really, all we need to do is copy and paste some of this stuff. Let's take all this out, and we'll make the necessary changes as we go. So at this point, it'll actually probably run just fine. It's not going to be exactly what we want. You know what? We'll save it for the end. I think that's good alignment. Let's go really slow, though. We'll take this, what I just did, and instead of doing it manually, I put it there. And instead of entering the image source manually, I put it there. All this stuff is contained in these key value pairs. Same thing here. This one I'm going to have to use a little bit of, oh no, maybe no string interpolation necessary. But I need to replace these coordinates that I've hard-coded with my actual coordinates, or the dynamic coordinates. Okay, so if I've done all these things properly, I've just reduced, what is this? Looks like the line count down here is 41, say -5 for what I've just contributed here. So I've reduced 36 lines of static code down to, well, I guess it's more than that, but that many lines of dynamic code, data-driven code. So let's see what it looks like. If I did everything right, it should look pretty good. Yeah, and there it is. So we've got the same styles. We've got our Google Maps, which open in a separate window using those values that we've assigned. So this one should be different than this one, of course. These different maps, it's just good sometimes just to see this stuff. This is what, a professional would use unit testing for. If you're just a learner, you got to do this stuff by hand. But yeah, 2 different maps, 2 different sets of coordinates. What else can I show you? That's it. We basically transitioned. We started that transition from static web page to dynamic data-driven web application. What's going to change in the coming days, probably next Monday, because I think Wednesday is going to be some object-oriented talk. We will no longer be hard coding these values because it's, we're still cheating here, right? All of this stuff should be stored somewhere in the database. We shouldn't have to do this every single time I take a new picture because we're not really getting ahead from what the problem that we're trying to solve here. Eventually, this is going to look something like this. And we're going to reduce this line. It'll look it'll be like this: cache.find or cache.all. And that's going to make a call to the database, and it's going to get all the records that you've created, and it's going to assign them. And so if there's like 1 in there, if there's 0 in there, it's going to render correctly every single time. You got 1,000 in there, it's going to render all those 1,000 of them. Hopefully we'll get to the point where we can start, paginating or making, an infinite scroll type situation. That might be a little bit too complex or time intensive, but I think we can at least do pagination. But that's what it's all going to come down to eventually. Not quite there yet. So any questions about that? What did we cover today? We covered layouts and views. Actually, since I'm here, let's tidy this all up. Get rid of all that stuff. We've made a nice dynamic web application. We talked about, how the layout, or well, actually how all of these views depend on the layout. This again is just more Sinatra default stuff. You can define these or define as many layouts as you want. We're keeping it simple, of course. We talked about, as part of our review, we talked about functions. I guess we didn't get to do a lot of that, but we did talk about this each. So we really dried out our code. I don't think that there's any repetition here anywhere. And I'm still, I'm talking, I'm trying to remember this. It seems like there's something else I wanted to tell you. But unless there aren't any questions. Any questions? All right. We'll let the mentors come around and you guys will keep on going with what you're doing.